The $5 bill sat in his palm like evidence. She'd just stepped out of his car, talking about 300 jobs she had to cut today. The same number he'd eliminated 5 years ago from his glass office. He'd been the CEO then. Now he drove strangers for spare change. But when she mentioned her father's name, his hands froze on the steering wheel. That name belonged to the man he'd destroyed with a single signature. The woman who just paid him $5 was that man's daughter. She didn't know she'd been driven by her father's killer. He did. And he had one choice: tell her the truth or let her become him. Jake Morrison woke at 5:30, same as every morning, to the sound of nothing. No alarm needed. His body knew when Tommy would need breakfast, when the school run started, when the first ride request would ping his phone. The apartment was small enough that he could hear his son breathing in the next room, a sound that had become his anchor these past 5 years. He made coffee in the ancient machine that coughed and sputtered like it resented being awake, then started eggs and toast, while the city outside shifted from dark to gray. Tommy appeared at 6:15, hair sticking up in 3 directions, dragging his backpack. 9 years old, and already learning to carry weight quietly. The boy had his mother's eyes, but Jake's silence, that careful way of watching the world before deciding what to say about it. They ate without much talking, the comfortable kind where words weren't necessary. Jake noticed Tommy's shoelaces were fraying again, made a mental note to grab a new pair at the dollar store. Every expense calculated now, every dollar stretched until it showed its seams. "Dad," Tommy said, fork halfway to his mouth, "why don't we live in a big house anymore?" Jake had been waiting for this question for months. He set down his coffee mug, the ceramic warm against fingers that had once signed documents worth millions. "Because big houses need big paychecks," he said. "And right now, we're doing okay with what we have." "But you had a big job before. Mom said you were important." The word important landed like a stone in still water. Jake looked at his son, at the earnest confusion in those eyes, and chose his words with the precision he used to reserve for board meetings. "I had a job that paid well. That's not the same as important." He reached across to ruffle Tommy's hair. "Being here with you every morning? That's important." Tommy seemed to accept this, or at least stopped pushing. They finished breakfast in renewed quiet. Then Jake drove them both toward the school in his 15-year-old sedan that rattled at red lights and smelled faintly of the air freshener he'd hung to mask the scent of 1,000 strangers. The morning commute took them past the financial district, glass towers catching the early sun like they were showing off. Jake kept his eyes on the road, but he felt the buildings anyway, their weight and pull. He'd worked in one of those towers once, corner office, 58th floor, view of the harbor. He'd thought the height made him powerful. Turned out it just made the fall longer. He dropped Tommy at school, watched him disappear into the crowd of children with their bright backpacks and easy laughter. Then he drove to the garage where he worked afternoons, fixing cars for people who couldn't afford dealerships. The owner, Carl, was already there, coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other, despite the no smoking sign he'd hung himself. "Morning, Jake. Got a transmission waiting for you." Jake nodded, grabbed his coveralls from the hook. The work was simple, methodical. Engines didn't judge. They either ran or they didn't. And if they didn't, there was always a reason you could find and fix. Not like people. Not like the choices that followed you even when you tried to drive away from them. He worked until noon, then cleaned up and switched on his rideshare app. The algorithm pinged him almost immediately. Downtown pickup, business district. Jake accepted it, started the car. Ignored the way his chest tightened when he saw the address. 47th and Market, half a block from his old building. The traffic was thick with lunch hour gridlock, delivery trucks double parked, and taxis fighting for space. Jake navigated it with the kind of patience he'd learned from Tommy, from long nights waiting for fevers to break and homework to make sense. He pulled up to the curb outside a steel and glass tower that looked like every other tower. and she appeared before he'd fully stopped. Victoria Reynolds moved like someone used to being followed, late 30s maybe, in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Jake's monthly rent. Dark hair pulled back sharp enough to hurt, heels that clicked authority on concrete. She opened the rear door without looking at him, slid in while already talking into her phone. "I don't care what the board thinks, Marcus. The numbers don't lie." Her voice had that boardroom edge, the kind that cut through objections. "We're hemorrhaging cash, and sentiment doesn't pay dividends." Jake adjusted the rearview mirror and caught her eyes for a second. Cold calculation in them, the look of someone doing math with human variables. He'd seen that look before, in his own mirror, years ago. "Destination?" he asked. She rattled off an address in the financial district without pausing her conversation. Jake pulled into traffic, kept his hand steady on the wheel. She kept talking, and he kept driving, trying not to listen, but unable not to hear. 300 positions, she said into her phone. "Yes, I'm aware of the optics. I'm also aware we'll be bankrupt by Q3 if we don't act." A pause. "The merger's contingent on restructuring. They want lean operations, not a charity." Jake's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. 300. That number had its own weight, its own gravity. He'd spoken that number once, in a conference room that smelled like leather and ambition. 300 jobs. Clean layoffs, his CFO had called it. Strategic downsizing. Industry standard. Jake had signed the papers between sips of espresso that cost $12 a cup. The traffic light caught them at an intersection, and in the sudden stillness, Victoria's conversation grew sharper. "My father would have understood," she said, and something in her voice shifted, went softer at the edges. "He ran a business. He knew sometimes you have to make hard choices." Another pause. "No, I don't think it's cold. I think it's realistic. These people will find other jobs. The market corrects itself." Jake's foot was too heavy on the gas when the light changed. The car lurched forward, and Victoria looked up from her phone for the first time since getting in. "Everything okay?" she asked, and there was actual concern there, unexpected and genuine. "Fine," Jake said. "Sorry. Gas pedal sticks sometimes." She returned to her phone, but kept glancing up now, watching the city pass outside her window. They were moving through the heart of downtown, surrounded by towers and ambition, and people in expensive suits making expensive decisions. Jake had been one of them. He'd thought the suit made him someone worth being. Then his engine died. The car rolled to a stop in the right lane, hazards blinking weak apology. Jake turned the key, got nothing but a tired clicking sound. Victoria looked up, phone lowering. "Is this a joke?" Not angry yet, just confused. "Give me a minute," Jake said. He popped the hood, got out into the heat and exhaust fumes of the city at midday. Under the hood, everything looked exactly like what it was. Old and tired, and held together with hope and duct tape. He checked the battery connections, the alternator belt, found nothing obvious. Behind him, he could hear Victoria on her phone again, rescheduling something, her voice tight with the kind of frustration that came from losing control. 10 minutes later, he admitted defeat. "I can't fix it here. I'll call a tow." Victoria stepped out of the car, looked at her watch, then at the street around them. "I have a meeting in 40 minutes. "I'll refund your fare," Jake said, "and call you another car. The app says there's a 12-minute wait for the nearest driver." She looked at him directly now, really looked at him for the first time. "How far is it to 63rd and Park?" 20 blocks. "Can you walk it in 40 minutes? Jake thought about the transmission waiting for him at Carl's garage, about Tommy's after-school program that started at 3, about the careful architecture of his day that kept him too busy to think. Then he thought about 300 jobs and the woman standing in front of him who didn't know she was about to make the same mistake he had. "Yeah," he said, "I can walk it." Victoria pulled a $5 bill from her wallet, held it out. "For your time." Jake took it, and the paper felt wrong in his hand, too light for what it represented. "You don't have to. I insist." She started walking, heels clicking on pavement. "Are you coming?" They walked in silence for 3 blocks, weaving through lunch crowds and construction scaffolding. Victoria moved fast, like she was trying to outpace something invisible. Jake kept pace easily, his body remembering longer distances from when he used to run every morning before work, back when he thought physical fitness could somehow make up for moral bankruptcy. "You're quiet," Victoria said at Block 4. "Not much to say." "Most drivers talk about weather, traffic, their kids." "I have a son," Jake said. 9 years old. "That's it? That's all I get?" She was almost smiling now, some of the boardroom armor cracking. "Most people, you mention kids, they talk for 20 minutes. Tommy's a good kid, smart, kind. He's the best thing I ever did." Past tense? You're done doing good things? Jake looked at her then, at the way she asked questions like she was conducting depositions. "I'm working on it." They walked another block. Victoria's pace slowed slightly, whether from the heels or something else. Jake couldn't tell. She pulled out her phone, checked something, put it away with a sigh. "This decision I have to make," she said, not looking at him. "These 300 people. They have families too. Kids, probably. Some of them." She paused at a crosswalk, watching the signal. "Do you think that matters?" Jake felt something cold slide down his spine. "To who?" "To the universe. To God, if you believe in that. Does it matter that I know they're people and I'm doing it anyway?" The light changed. They crossed. Jake's mouth was dry. His words stuck somewhere behind his teeth. He'd asked himself the same question 5 years ago, sitting in his office with the termination papers spread across his desk, like a hand of cards he couldn't bluff his way out of. He'd decided it didn't matter. That business was business, and morality was something you dealt with on your own time. "I think," Jake said carefully, "that knowing makes it worse, not better." Victoria stopped walking. They were in front of a coffee shop, the smell of espresso drifting out every time the door opened. She turned to face him fully, and her eyes were different now, less certain. "Why?" "Because if you don't know, you can pretend they were just numbers, abstract. But if you know they're real and you do it anyway," he trailed off, unable to finish. "Then you have to live with it," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah." They stood there in the current of pedestrian traffic, 2 people who'd both stood at the same edge and looked down. Jake wanted to tell her everything right then, wanted to grab her by the shoulders and say, Don't become what I was. Don't carry what I carry." But his throat was closed, and his courage was somewhere back in that dead car. "My father lost his business," Victoria said. 10 years ago. Another company bought them out, promised to keep everyone employed, then shut down the whole operation 6 months later. She started walking again, slower now. 300 people. Same number. He never recovered from that. The guilt of it. He'd built that company from nothing, employed people from the neighborhood, knew everyone's names. When it ended, it killed something in him. Jake's chest constricted, each breath suddenly difficult. He knew this story. He knew it because he'd been in it, on the other side of the conference table, making promises he had no intention of keeping. "What was the company name?" His voice came out wrong, too tight. "Reynolds Manufacturing. Small operation, custom industrial parts. My dad was Roy Reynolds." She smiled, sad and distant. He tried to talk to the CEO who made the call, flew across the country, waited in the lobby for 6 hours. When he finally got 5 minutes, you know what that man told him. Jake couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The city around him had gone silent and sharp. He said, "It's just business, Mr. Reynolds. Nothing personal." Victoria's voice had gone flat, emotionless. The way people sounded when they were trying not to break. "My dad came home, and he was different, smaller somehow, like that CEO had taken something from him that couldn't be replaced." Victoria, Jake started, but she kept talking. He died 2 years later. Heart attack, technically. But I think he died the day that man told him he didn't matter, that his people didn't matter, that it was all just numbers in a ledger. She looked at Jake then, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. So, yes, I know these people are real. I know they have families and mortgages and dreams, and I have to decide if that matters more than keeping my company alive. They'd reached her building, 60 stories of steel and glass, climbing toward a sky that didn't care about the small dramas unfolding in its shadow. Victoria stopped at the entrance, turned to face him completely. "Thank you for walking with me," she said. "I know it was supposed to be a ride, but somehow, this was better." Jake looked at her, at Roy Reynolds' daughter, at the woman who was about to step into a boardroom and make the same choice that had destroyed her father and ruined Jake's soul. His hands were shaking. The $5 bill was still in his pocket, burning like evidence. "I need to tell you something," he said. Victoria checked her watch. "I have 15 minutes. It'll take less than that." Jake's heart was hammering against his ribs. "The CEO who shut down your father's company, the one who said it was just business. What about him? It was me." The words hung in the air between them, solid and undeniable. Victoria went very still, her face cycling through expressions too fast to read. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, fury. "What?" "Jacob Morrison. I was Morrison Tech. We acquired Reynolds Manufacturing for the client contracts, planned to shut down operations from day one. Your father came to my office. I gave him 5 minutes. I said exactly what you quoted." Jake's voice was steady now, past fear into something like relief. "I'm the one who killed your father." Victoria took a step back, her hand going to her throat. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Jake pulled out his wallet, extracted his expired driver's license from 5 years ago, the one with his old address in the business district. He handed it to her. "Check if you don't believe me." She looked at the license, then at him, then at the license again. Her hands were trembling now, the perfectly manicured fingers clutching plastic, like it might explain something that couldn't be explained. She couldn't finish the sentence. 6 months after I shut down your father's company, mine collapsed. Hostile takeover. I lost everything. Wife, house, savings, reputation, everything except Tommy." Jake's voice was quiet but clear. "I've spent 5 years driving cars and fixing transmissions and trying to figure out how to be a person again. And then today, I picked you up, and you're about to do exactly what I did." Victoria's face had gone pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Get away from me." "Victoria, get the fuck away from me." Her voice cracked. "You're the one. You're the reason my dad, the reason we lost everything. The reason my mother couldn't look at a business section without crying. I know. You don't know anything. You don't know what it was like watching him die slowly, watching him shrink into someone who couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't fucking breathe without remembering that he'd failed everyone who trusted him." Tears were streaming down her face now, carving lines through her makeup. "And you did that. You sat in your office and you did that with a signature." "You're right," Jake said. "And I can't take it back. I can't bring him back. I can't undo any of it. But I can stand here right now and tell you that what I did has haunted me every single day since. That I see your father's face in my dreams. That I hear his voice begging me to reconsider. And I can tell you that if you walk into that boardroom and make the same choice I made, you'll become me. I'm nothing like you. You're exactly like me. You're smart and driven and convinced that business decisions exist in some separate moral universe where consequences don't touch you." Jake stepped closer, his voice urgent now. "But they do. They touch you everywhere. They change who you are. I used to be able to sleep. I used to look in mirrors without flinching. I used to believe I was a good person doing necessary things. And now I know I was just someone who valued money more than people. Victoria wiped her face with the back of her hand, leaving a smear of mascara across her cheek. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked what I'd do. And I'd tell you that there's always another way. It's harder, it pays less, it might cost you everything. But at least you'll still be able to look at yourself. At least you won't spend the rest of your life driving away from who you used to be. They stood in silence, the city rushing past around them like they were stones in a river. Victoria's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked at it, then at Jake, then at the building behind her. I have a meeting. I know. They're expecting my decision. I know. She turned toward the door, took 3 steps, then stopped. Her shoulders were rigid, her whole body tensed against something invisible. When she turned back, her face was different. Softer. Still angry, still hurt. But something else, too. Something that looked like understanding. Did you ever apologize? To my father? I tried. After everything fell apart, I looked him up. Found out he'd died. I went to your mother's house. She wouldn't open the door. Wouldn't even look at me through the window. Jake's voice was rough now, scraped raw. I wrote her a letter. She sent it back unopened. I deserved that. Yeah, you did. I still do. Victoria nodded slowly. So what do I do? How do I make this decision? I don't know. I just know that if you make it the way I did, by pretending people are numbers, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to remember they weren't. Jake looked up at the building, at all that glass and steel reaching toward nothing. Find another way. There's always another way. It just costs more. More money? More of you. Victoria's phone buzzed again. She silenced it, then looked at Jake with something that might have been respect, or might have been pity. I can't forgive you. Not today. Maybe not ever. I don't expect you to. But I can. I can thank you. For telling me. For walking with me. For not letting me walk in there blind. She straightened her shoulders, wiped the last of the tears from her face. I need to go. Good luck. She nodded once, then disappeared into the building, swallowed by revolving doors and marble and the machinery of commerce. Jake stood on the sidewalk, watching her go, feeling something in his chest that might have been relief or might have been grief. He'd told the truth. For the first time in 5 years, he'd said it all out loud to someone who had the right to hear it. His phone buzzed. Ride request, 15 blocks away. He accepted it, started walking. His legs were tired, and his heart felt like it had been wrung out and hung to dry. But he kept moving. That was the trick. He'd learned. You kept moving. You kept showing up. You kept trying to be better than you were yesterday. That night, after he'd picked up Tommy from school and made dinner and helped with homework, after his son was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Jake sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. He checked the news, more from habit than hope. And there it was, buried in the business section. Reynolds FinTech announces innovative partnership model preserves all jobs. He clicked the article, read it 3 times. Victoria had found another way, some kind of employee ownership structure, profit-sharing model. Something Jake's MBA brain said was risky, but his human heart said was right. The article quoted her. My father taught me that business should serve people, not the other way around. Today's decision honors his memory and everyone who believes in building something that lasts. Jake closed the laptop, his hands shaking. He'd expected to feel vindicated, or proud, or something clean and simple. Instead, he felt the full weight of what he'd destroyed, because Victoria had found another way, which meant there had always been another way. He just hadn't been willing to look for it. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Morrison. Victoria's voice, tired but steady. You did it. I did something. Whether it works remains to be seen. A pause. I wanted to call and tell you that I can't forgive you for my father. That's not mine to give. He's gone, and nothing changes that. I know. But I can thank you for today, for stopping me from becoming you, for being the warning I needed. Her voice softened slightly. Maybe that's your redemption, not in fixing what you broke, but in preventing someone else from breaking more. Jake couldn't speak, his throat too tight. Mr. Morrison? Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. For the $5 ride. It was worth considerably more. She hung up before he could respond. Jake sat in his small kitchen, in his small apartment, in his small life that had once been enormous and was now just the right size for what mattered. He thought about Roy Reynolds, about the man he'd killed with carelessness dressed up as competence. He thought about Victoria, about the choice she'd made, and the strength it must have taken to choose differently. Then he thought about Tommy, asleep in the next room, and the man he was trying to become. Not the man who'd signed those papers, not even the man who'd spent 5 years trying to outrun guilt. Someone new, someone who kept showing up even when it was hard, someone who told the truth even when it hurt. He stood, walked quietly to Tommy's room, pushed the door open a crack. His son was sprawled across the bed, one arm dangling off the side, breathing deep and even. 9 years old, and carrying a future Jake was trying hard not to poison. He thought about all the rides he'd given, all the people he'd driven who probably reminded someone of someone else. Anonymous kindnesses that couldn't balance the ledger, but added up to something anyway. The $5 bill was still in his pocket. He pulled it out, looked at it in the dim light from the hallway. Evidence, payment, penance. He folded it carefully and placed it on Tommy's dresser, next to the picture of the two of them at the aquarium, both grinning like nothing bad had ever happened. Then he went back to the kitchen and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his ride history, all those strangers going all those places. Tomorrow he'd drive more of them. The day after that, more still. Small acts of service that didn't undo anything but might, eventually, add up to someone worth being. Outside his window, the city glowed against the dark. All those towers full of people making choices they'd have to live with. Jake thought about calling his ex-wife, trying one more time to explain. But what would he say? That he'd finally told the truth to someone who mattered? That he'd helped someone avoid his mistakes? That he was still trying to figure out how to be human? Instead, he opened a new document on his laptop and started typing. Not a business plan or a strategy memo, just words. The truth of what had happened, written plainly, without justification or excuse. He didn't know what he'd do with it. Maybe nothing. Maybe send it to Tommy someday when his son was old enough to understand that people could be terrible and still be loved, could make irredeemable choices and still keep trying. He wrote until his eyes burned and his fingers ached, until the kitchen window started showing the first gray light of morning. Then he closed the laptop, made coffee, and started the routine that held him together. Soon Tommy would wake up. Soon they'd eat breakfast in comfortable silence. Soon Jake would drive his son to school and then start accepting ride requests, carrying strangers through the city, one small journey at a time. The $5 bill stayed on Tommy's dresser, folded next to the photograph, a reminder that redemption wasn't one grand gesture. It was this: showing up, telling truth, choosing different. It was walking 20 blocks with someone who had every right to hate you and still trying to save them from yourself. Jake Morrison had been a CEO once. He'd had power and money and a corner office with views that made him feel invincible. Now, he had a 9-year-old son who trusted him, a broken car he knew how to fix, and the beginning of something that felt like peace. It wasn't much, but it was real. And real, he'd learned, was the only currency that mattered. Outside, the city woke up. Inside, Jake poured cereal for Tommy, and told himself that today, like every day, was another chance to be the person his son believed he was. Not perfect, not redeemed, just present, just trying, just real. That was enough. It had to be.